Oh, this is it. This is it. This is the final transition of mankind. They're going into eternity. The question is, which road in eternity are they going to be in? You know, which road? Because if your soul is condemned, that means your heart and your soul turn to blackness. That blackness, Anthony, I had a dream one time, and I have to state this again. I was real little. I was tiny, but the dream impacted me so much, it never, ever left me. And this was, I was 6 or 7 or somewhere around there, 8, somewhere around there. Anyway, I went into this place, and it looked like it was 2 rows of people. On the left side were people who didn't have a lot, and their clothes were torn and everything. And they were going down this one way, but on the right side, people had briefcases and cell phones and things of that nature, dressed very nicely. They were going on the right side. Now, mind you, this was back in the 70s, right? And I see cell phones. I used to draw pictures of cell phones and computers before they ever came out. And my siblings still have the pictures from this dream. This dream bothered me. And but the people on the right, they had the cell phones and everything. They were told to go by this door. And the other people on the left were entering in through another door, a real pretty door. And then they would vanish. But all the other folks on the right who had the cell phones and PDAs and all this stuff and the business clothing, they were real busy. They were told to stand on the right. The person that escorted me there, that entity that escorted me there, told me to stand back. He opened the door, and in the door was the absence of anything that is called light. And do you know what happened to the people on the right? They were sucked in to that blackness. They were sucked in. The explanation was this. What is in a person? What resides in a person? What resides in a person will be that very thing that's attracted in their eternity. If a person is full of darkness, when the darkness opens up, it's going to draw them right into it. If a person is full of light, then when the light opens up, they're going to be drawn into it. You see, the people on the left side, even though he opened the door, weren't even affected by the darkness. But everybody that was in that line, they were absolutely sucked into the darkness. I mean, it was nothing. In this dream, or whatever it was, the blackness was so black. I've never seen black that black. You can shut your eyes and you still can't get that black. There was no love there. It was absolutely the absence of all light, all heat, all warmth, all love, anything good. It was everything negative. And it was so strong that they shut the door. When all those people were consumed, the door is shut. The door is shut. But the other people, consequently, they went to another realm. And there was a table in this dream. And every so often I see a person pop up at the table, maybe 2, 3, 4. It was a huge table. And I asked that person there, I said, who are these? He said, well, these are praying on earth. And when they pray, they appear at this table. And I was thinking in my head, there's not that many people praying. This is what I was thinking as a little kid. There's hardly anybody really praying. But the people that were praying, the people that were praying, I could feel their prayers. And when they did actually really pray, they appeared at this. I mean, it was a huge table. And that table was guarded. It was being observed all the time. And the rest of the places I could not go. I was only allowed to see that little part. But in that place, you could think to go anywhere in time you wanted to. All you had to do was think it and you were there. So I went to the earth to observe. Now, where I went, I saw this woman crying. The sun was extremely bright. The grass looked like it had not seen water in years. The trees were barely growing, but the sun was out. The seasons were all messed up. And this woman was crying, and you know what she was doing? She was blaming God and everybody else for everything that happened to her. This woman was, she was in drugs, she was doing things for drugs and everything else. I heard the television and saw Fox. Now, this is in the 70s, guys. And I'm sitting there looking at the television with the little red things going, right? And it was Fox. But she was sitting there, so they still had television, but everything else was beaten down. And everybody's scene that was left, there were no children at all. She was absolutely upset because her children were gone, too. There were no children on the earth at all, not one child. And people, the lifestyle that they lived outside of Christ, they lived it without any hope or anything else. There was still a chance for them to make it. But guess what? The darkness had grown so much in them, they couldn't see anything else. They couldn't. And everybody who was in that condition wanted to die, and they couldn't. They could not do it. They could not bring themselves to kill themselves, yet they were still addicted to every drug you can imagine, just like today. They were doing things just like today. But the world had very few people in it. I mean, you could ride on the highways, and there were hardly any cars going. A lot of cars pulled over on the side of the road, old cars run down and off, but hardly anybody was on the face of the earth compared to today. Now, this was back in the 70s, guys, when I was young. And so I was impacted the entire time, drawing pictures of cell phones and things of that nature, and it was other things in there, but it's really, you'd have to hear it from my siblings because they thought I was a nutball because I was obsessed with drawing cell phones and PDAs and computers. I used to tell my parents that one day they're going to have images on the screen that are so sharp they look real. And all the movies are going to be, they're going to be on a type of computer that's real. They're going to look real. I absolutely saw the time we live in when I was very, very young.
That is an incredible story. I've never heard anybody with an account like that. That is amazing.
Well, it changed my life forever. It really did. It changed everything about me. And I grew up, I was very weird. If my sibling was in here, she would probably likely tell you some other weird stories. It's almost like since that time, I was able to see the truth of a few things, and I can't let them go. And they still happen from time to time. Guys, like at the beginning of last year, people in COT now start talking about Russia and the Muslims and the Africans all together in one hangar. And when you know it, what happened this year? You had Ebola, Africans, and the African uprising. Then you had ISIS, and then you had Russia making moves. Now, it didn't make sense at the time, but I was just compelled to share that. And the arrogancy of the United States, because when they totally turned their back, then the Russian Navy was highly involved in something with the Islamic forces and with the African forces. But the vice president and the president would not listen, and then something terrible happened.
Wow. Well, the Lord definitely blesses you with some of that insight.
Well, you know what? I don't like seeing. I really don't like vision. I really do not like visions, nor do I like the dreams like that, because they disturb you. They're not your. They really disturb you. You feel very. You feel like you just feel emotionally drained when you wake up from those. They're not happy at all. They're sorrowful and everything else because you can feel the emotion and everything. So I don't like them. However, I'm just a simple tool. And the Lord, one way or another, will use someone so that he can say, I'm going to keep you all informed. And you know what? Just like you, Anthony, and you, Jesse, I thank God for people out there like yourselves who find the time and who are compelled. You see, the truth is we're all compelled to continue to search for that very thing within us that's driving us, because somehow all of us know that time is short. Every single last one of us, we know that time is short. And we try to look for that very thing that only we can recognize. And it's almost a rush on what you're doing, because the day you try to live a normal life and say, well, nothing's happening, I'm going to kick back, you're reminded of something. And then what happens? You're back again. There's no way the Lord's going to let you live normal again. That's gone, because you're compelled to share. Because the moment you start to lose hope and this, that, and something happens, and you already knew it was going to happen, and it validates something, a thought or something that was within you. And then you're back, but you're standing up again. And so I'm very thankful for folks like yourself, because some people, they get it, but guess what? They never share it. They won't share it. They won't act on it. They won't take that step of faith to convey it.
I'm sure I speak for both of you guys when I say that the word compelled is very, very much right on the spot. This has consumed me, and I know it's from the Lord. I have prayed so much as to what is the source of the motivation for me to get involved in all of the writing that I've been doing. And it takes up all of my time outside of my own, my own employment. And I do. There are times when I'm physically wiped out and I just say, I can't do this anymore. And he snaps you right back. He puts you back. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yes, I've heard from you.
Well, what I was going to say is, we're talking about destruction with CERN and some things like that. But what did God say about destruction? He said, my people are destroyed by lack of knowledge. And that goes to the key of what we're doing. And it happens to reflect in the fact that men's hearts will fail them. And that will destroy them. But if they're aware, Michael, again, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Not too much, but by being aware of the things coming on this earth to where they're not overcome and overwhelmed. And that's the key to a watchman's creed.
Amen.
I agree with that completely.
That stirred me up. You know what? It stirred me up because I'm saying, yesterday, I've been wanting to get back to some roots in Jeremiah. Of course, sometimes the Lord moves me to get some foundational things in there. But you know what? The Lord absolutely gave his watchmen a cry and put it into their hearts. The Lord called that his trumpet. He did. He said it would call people to blow the trumpet in the world. His watchmen and the watchers, the new set of watchers. And that's why it stirred me up, Jesse, is because if the Lord gave us this call, there's no way we can not do it. We can't. We will be compelled. It doesn't matter how we feel or anything else. We can't make sense of what's driving us all the time. But the Lord is continuing to do it. He said that in the book of Jeremiah, that he's going to use people to blow his trumpet. And you see, they're sounding the alarm and blowing the trumpet. But we'll get to the rest of that in Jeremiah, because that blowing of the trumpet is far expansive than what people know. And because there is the trumpet, and then there's that warning trumpet that comes from Zion. Zion meaning God himself, putting that in us, sounding the alarm to everybody else. That's a study within itself, but I get excited because the word validates this compelling that we all feel inside. It also lets us know who we are. No matter how we stumble or anything else, folks, I'm telling you, if the Lord placed something within you, you belong to him. You absolutely belong to him. And we're not going to, I don't make the right moves all the time, right? But that happens. But the Lord will never withdraw what that when you feel compelled, he's not taking it away. We're compelled to keep going. It's a power beyond us. And I'm sure that Jesse and Anthony, sometimes you guys, you really, sometimes you question, what are you doing? But as soon as you begin to question it, something hits, and you're compelled, and that energy level within you just sparks up again, and you can't help yourself but to run forward again. Somebody can say, why are you running? I have no idea, but I have to do it.
Michael, that's exactly right. And the reason everybody that's listening to this broadcast right now is they have the same compelling from God to learn. And we do that because we want to know. The people listening want to know. And so when they find out, they share it. When we find out, we share it. But the people here are all part of one group that is looking for that light at the end of the tunnel, the truth. And you don't always know why, but it's God telling you to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he loves his children here on this planet. And listen, we talk about CERN. And you know something, Michael, I'm glad it's there. You know why? Because we're going to bring about the return of our Lord Jesus Christ. And amen. Because I'm tired of these people run this earth, these politicians and these scientists, and I'm not suicidal, but I'm looking forward to that day when I lose my physical body and meet my Lord and Savior in my spiritual body. So let them bring it on. Let's just be prepared mentally, by knowledge.
That's right.
I'm excited. I'm excited because I know it's close. I'm not afraid. I'm excited. You know, anybody really loves Jesus would be excited too, I think. And not afraid, because fear is the devil's tool.
That's right. Perfect love casts out all fear.
That's right. Perfect love Christ and looking for him to come. It's going to open up that channel, Michael, where he can feed that energy in, and that knowledge as we need it, and that understanding, and that ability to tell Satan, get behind me.
Yes. That is. You know what, Jesse? One of the things, speaking of fear, some people think they have fear, but it's not really fear, it's something else. And sometimes, Jesse, what happens, like, we have a hope for our Lord's return. And so we walk boldly in this world, knowing that when the wickedness is great upon the earth, the Lord says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Get down here, he's telling me, get down there and harvest. That's it. When the wickedness is great. A lot of people have fear, and they have these other emotions because their heart right now is not truly set for his coming, and they're still holding on to things here on earth. You see, once you let go of the earth, once you have said, no, God is important than anything else in my life ever, and once you begin to think like that, there's nothing on earth that can hold you back. There's nothing in you that will harbor that darkness which is going to consume a great many people. You
realize how temporary the physical world is.
That's right, and we know this is not our home. That's the biggest point. We instinctively know this is not our home. We're here temporarily for a short season, and then we're gone. And so we're setting up our treasures truly in heaven, in eternity. But you have some people who don't want to let this world go. And I'll say this as a small warning to the audience out there. When you know someone like that, or you feel like that yourselves, any darkness that's within you is going to attract you to this darkness that will open in this world, will witness, because mankind will absolutely witness the skies rolling together as a scroll. Mankind will absolutely witness the darkness in the heavens. They're going to witness a darkness they never knew existed. And if they have darkness within them, they're going to be stuck. And at that point, guys, I believe at that point, it's a finished deal. It's a finished deal. And so we have all this time right now to get it right, to be truthful to our call. That's just like us three. We can't help to do what we do. Well, if some people out there, they're going to have to stop projecting it. Because I bet you at times all three of us, we have rejected it initially because we just simply didn't know. But that's not faith either, is it? If you know something beforehand, it does not take faith to do it. And so, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm sure it happened with you. I had no choice. The Lord just compelled me to go. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no choice. I had no choice. But I'm saying,
they're with it.
Michael, I think we're cutting out.
Are you there, Michael?
Uh-oh. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay.
Michael, I think the key to what you're saying is love, because when you see something coming, when a watchman sees something coming, the reason that he runs to the wall and sounds that trumpet is because he cares about what happens to his brother, his fellow people, his brothers and his sisters. It's called love.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You care about what happens. And a lot of people may not agree with you, or they may not like the message, but you're still going to sound it because you care. You're just like calling your parents. You know a tornado's headed towards your house. Are you going to pick up the phone and say, are you watching the weather? Are you just going to say, well, maybe they are, maybe they're not? You know, the blood is on your hand at that point, according to the Bible.
Hey, Jesse and Anthony, don't let me interrupt, but you guys keep going. When you're finished singing, I have got to run. Folks, I did enjoy this show. God bless everybody. You guys can keep talking. Take your own time when you're in. Pastor Scott will start right after you guys finish. God bless everybody.
Michael, thank you, and I've had my say, Anthony. Anthony,
I think we'll wrap it up.
Adopt the words of God in their lives. There are a lot of people who you guys are going to see drastic changes in folks. I think it's because they're hitting this, it's almost like a wall. They've heard prophecy too long. They become stagnant in prophecy, and they want something new or something more. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes when you hear the same message over and over and over again, you have no enthusiasm behind your learning, or you feel you know it all, you already know it, you tend to become a different person. You start walking away from things, and we're going to see a lot of that. Certainly among some of the people who they just have different views. They have different views, and certain things are hard to swallow. One thing I know for certain is that when things come about, that changes the whole picture. This year will require some type of demonstration to renew the fire underneath some people. But I'm going to keep mine going. I don't know about you, but my fire is not going to go out. It's not going to slip left or right or anything else. I refuse to let that happen. As my reasonable servant, I refuse to let that happen. I'm not going to slip up or start resting or anything else. This is the exact time we push further. We push a little harder. We grab onto our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ with all of our might. This is that moment. This is that time. Because a lot of people are going to begin to backtrack. They're going to hear things about planets coming into the solar system. You know what? We shared a long time ago that our solar system is in fact a binary system. We have two suns. And everybody thought that was ludicrous. Well, they're going to see the beginnings of things that are going to be explained with a system with two suns. It can only be explained with a system with two suns. And by the way, the other sun has a lot of junk around. You know what? They lie so much, and it's because people don't have access to direct optics. How many people know that Jupiter has its own planetoid? How many know that? How many know Saturn has its own planetoid? How many know that? Not many people know this. Jupiter and Saturn is almost like a mini system itself. A mini system. But see, we only know by pictures.
Two powerful cyclones have smashed into northern Australia. Parts of Queensland and the Northern Territory were hit by damaging winds and heavy rain as cyclones Marcia and Lam swept through. In Queensland, authorities have ordered coastal residents to evacuate their homes, as warnings suggest the storm could prove deadly. A cyclone of similar strength destroyed scores of homes in the state in 2011. Winds of up to 200 kilometres per hour have put Marcia at a Category 4. Meanwhile, further north, Cyclone Lam caused widespread damage to remote island communities before hitting mainland Australia and being downgraded to a Category 2 storm. There are no current reports of casualties.
Hello everyone. So I'm coming in here today to talk a little bit about something we all cover here at this channel and over at Bunker Report on Facebook, which is supervolcanoes. Now, I read a very interesting article the other day that was sent to me by somebody, and I'll post the links in here so you guys can read it for yourself. But what it's saying is, will a supervolcano in the world? And that's a question that we always ask, and that's why we continuously monitor supervolcanic activity on the planet. Now, the prime candidate nowadays is Yellowstone, especially after the 4.9 last year. It really jumped on the radar, and it got everybody flipping out. And a lot of people woke up and started preparing and doing all kinds of other things. But at the same time, you got to understand a supervolcanic eruption will affect the global climate to a point where it could pull us into another ice age, a wasteland. But anyway, my point here is that it's not just Yellowstone that we all have to focus on, because there are plenty of active supervolcanoes on this planet right now, and which we'll go into a few here. Right here you got not just Yellowstone, but you got the Long Valley caldera, which is out in California. Okay, you also have the Valles caldera, which is down in Mexico. Okay, it's in New Mexico, west of Santa Fe. But that's why I'm saying all of these are showing signs of activity, and a lot of activity. Let's not forget Lake Toba, because Lake Toba was pretty much what you would call the last super eruption while humans were on this planet. And what geologists say, when Lake Toba erupted on the island of Sumatra like 75,000 years ago, they say it had 10,000 times the explosive force of Mount St. Helens eruption. And it says, you know, the dust cloud the dust cloud that Toba created quite possibly changed all life on Earth. Okay? Well, and then another thing they say about Toba is that millions of tons of ash were thrown into the atmosphere. So much of it that it blocked out the sun worldwide as far as 2,500 miles away. With 14 inches of ash blanketing the ground, global temperatures plummeted 21 degrees. For months, rain was black, acidic sludge. Man was pushed to the edge of extinction. Human population reduced to just a couple of thousand. 3/4 of all plants north of the equator were killed. Could it happen again? Yes, say geologists. In fact, we're way overdue. And like I say, it's not just Yellowstone you have to worry about. Right here you have the New Zealand Taupo caldera. It's active right now. You also have the Eri caldera in Japan, which is erupting all the time. So that's another one, but is it going to be a big blast? Well, like I say, and let's not forget either that we also have the Blake River megacaldera on Canada's Ontario-Quebec border. Let's not forget about that one. And let's not forget about Campe Flegrei, just west of Naples, and Mount Vesuvius, which has the same exact activity as Yellowstone has been having. But all of these calderas are becoming active. Why? We don't know just yet. Actually, nobody knows. And if people jump in here and say it's, plate tectonics and everything else, they're making an assumption that that's what the problem is. But like I say, it's not just Yellowstone that we have to worry about. I'll post the link so you guys can read through this article. It's very, very interesting. I think you guys will enjoy it. But keep your eyes open, stay at the ready, and let's network together and keep each other informed. Other than that, take care.
Before their 15 minutes of fame ticked away, Johnny Knoxville and MTV's homoerotic Jackass crew were some of the biggest celebrities of their time, known for their homoerotic antics and crude candid camera-style stunts, most of which involved kicking each other in the nuts or smashing their testicles with various objects. Soon after Jackass began airing on MTV in 2002, countless morons videotaped themselves mimicking what they saw on the show, sometimes leading to serious injury. One of the stars, Steve O, actually has a tattoo on his arm of the Jesus fish with the word Satan written inside. If this isn't bad enough, he also got a tattoo literally depicting a man raping a baby. This is what he said it depicted, that's what it depicted, but after his close friends even found it appalling, he decided to get an ostrich tattooed over the baby to cover it up, so now it looks like a man having sex with an ostrich. Steve-O's love for Satan can also be seen on MTV Cribs in an episode featuring the Jackass crew where he picks up a cat, who he shows to the camera and identifies as Lucifer. Steve-O once opened up for the death metal band Deicide, which means killing God, deity, homicide, get it? Deicide. And as he was introducing the band on stage, he began ranting about his hatred of God, saying that if God wants to send him to hell, that's great. He wants to take God with him. In 2008, Steve-O's friends forced him to check into a mental health clinic because of his long-term drug abuse problems. He was placed on a 72-hour psychiatric hold, which was later lengthened to 2 weeks because of a purported suicide attempt. He pled guilty to felony possession of cocaine and avoided jail by completing a treatment program. And in the MTV documentary titled Steve-O, The Demise and Rise that followed his road to sobriety, he admitted that he would hear voices and thought that he was possessed by demons, saying that, quote, that's pretty evident by some of the footage. Steve-O, by the way, is not the only jackass to apparently dance with the devil. A spin-off of Jackass aired for a few years titled Viva La Bam, starring Bam Margera and his friends who engaged in a series of destructive and cruel pranks aimed at Bam's poor parents. And throughout the show, you could see that Bam had a huge satanic pentagram type of symbol mounted on his wall called a heartogram, which is a combination of a pentagram and a heart. The symbol is a logo for Bam's favorite band, Him, which also has a song titled Your Sweet 666. Bam also has the symbol as a hood ornament on one of his cars, and the logo for Viva La Bam incorporated the El Diablo satanic hand sign, which is formed by raising the index and pinky fingers. After Jackass premiered on MTV in the early 2000s, every teenager in the country knew who Johnny Knoxville was, along with Steve-O, and the other jackasses in the show, and many kids across the country were inspired by the idiotic stunts they saw and attempted to mimic them, often leading to serious injury. Johnny Knoxville, whose real name is Philip Clapp, the breakout star of Jackass, would later break his penis as a result of his risky and idiotic behavior. When trying to jump a motorcycle, it flipped over and landed on top of him, crushing his genitals, preventing him from being able to urinate normally for years, possibly forever. From that point on, in order to urinate, he has had to use a catheter, which means shoving a tube down his pee hole in order to open it up and then drain the urine. The scar tissue from his injury has apparently permanently closed off his urinary tract and has most likely made him impotent as well. The irony is that he built his career by getting kicked in the nuts and having people smash him in the crotch with various objects, and then later he found his balls broken and useless, which I doubt he finds very funny. Steve-O has been sober, at least for the last few years. Thankfully, luckily, cleaned up his act before it was too late. But his out-of-control antics just go to show the dangerous and self-destructive behavior of a Satanist, of somebody who admittedly hated God and had, a tattoo of a, pedophilia, basically pedophilic rape on his body, along with his satanic devil tattoo and naming his cat Lucifer. So we can only use Steve-O really as an example of what somebody who hates God does with their life, having no respect for themselves, for others, for other people's property. Steve-O, just a poor, sad, sick Satanist who has made some progress. But what do you really do with yourself when you've made a complete career out of self-destructive, homoerotic, bizarre, perverted, self-destructing, self-mutilating stunts, really?
And we even had a few labels getting at us and everything, inquiring about us, talking about they was gonna fly in the shows and all of that stuff. I mean, it was serious, man. The cats that I was actually with, I had heard one of the cats rapping one time in one of the songs talking about selling their soul for fast cars and riches for whatever reason. It came down to it that dudes actually started being used by demonic spirits, and these spirits started speaking through them, devils started speaking through them. It was crazy, man. It was real though, true story. It had nothing to do with no drugs or nothing like that. It was just straight crossroads, intersection of the natural realm, and the spiritual realm, butting heads, and I had to make my choice which way I was gonna go.
Jurors this morning have more insight about what happened in the moments after American sniper Chris Kyle was killed.
Eddie Ray Routh led police on a chase reaching speeds of 100 miles an hour, driving the pickup truck owned by Navy SEAL Chris Kyle. This video shown to jurors Thursday. The chase began after Routh rolled over spike strips laid down by police. At one point, a police car rammed into the truck. Routh was taken into custody shortly after. He told the court that Routh made a series of bizarre comments. He'd taken a couple of souls, and he had more souls to take.
One of the responding officers was wearing a body camera. Jurors could hear Routh saying, quote, "I can feel people feeding on my soul." And he asks, quote, "Is the apocalypse upon us right now?"
I can read you some of the quotes. Police were talking to him before he took off. And these are some of the things that Routh is quoted as saying. He says, "I don't know if I'm going insane. Is this about like hell is its work is walking on earth right now?" And then he goes on to say, "Is it voodoo that's upon us?" And finally he says, "Is the apocalypse on top of us right now?"
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we celebrate artists whose music and message help shape our culture. And together we can change our culture for the better.
Edge. Now, as time progressed in the dream, I was given the ability to realize by being in homes that television sets not only broadcast and transmitted programming, but they now had the capacity to actually send signals about you in your living room. Now listen, I was able to see that television sets were actually watching people in their homes, monitoring their movements, monitoring their conversations.
More than just bringing you your favorite shows, it may be watching and recording your every move. Night on Your Side, Scott Wagoner tells us this smart TV has some people worried.
Since the late 1940s, families have gathered around the television set to watch their favorite shows. But now, in 2015, it appears the television is watching back. It's Samsung's Smart TV. It collects this information through a camera aimed at the viewer and microphones that pick up your conversation.
We should absolutely be concerned about this.
UC journalism professor Jeff Blevins advises you to read the small print.
Oftentimes, I think we're not aware of exactly what it is that that we're giving away, or what the consequence of that might be.
Samsung says the technology is designed to respond to your preferences. It can find your favorite shows, connect you to services it thinks you would like, and allows you to change its function with a wave of your hand.
So my freedoms and my patriotism were instantly being eroded from my understanding.
Because our rights contained in the Bill of Rights do not come from the Constitution. They come from God. It's clearly stated in the Declaration of Independence.
Our laws do not come from God, Your Honor, and you know that.
The law of this country calls it the organic law of our country, means where our rights come from. And if they come from there, men can't take them away.
Our rights do not come from God.
For journalists in this country, the realization that the government is spying on their communications is becoming more and more common. That's according to a new study from the Pew Research Center. It reports that nearly 7 in 10 journalists believe that the Obama administration has in fact spied on them. But where is the media pushback against all of this?
Sobriety checkpoints. Thousands of motorists are stopped in them each year.
Good evening, man. How you doing?
Typically, drivers are asked to roll down the window and hand over ID. But more drivers are starting to challenge these DUI checkpoints.
A video making its way around the internet is advising motorists that at police DUI checkpoints like this one, motorists can simply communicate in writing.
More than 2 million people have watched the video. It shows somewhat surprised officers in Levy County, Florida, look at a flyer and examine identification with the window up.
I have my fair DUI flyer.
The flyer says, "I remain silent, no searches, I want my lawyer," along with sections of the motor vehicle law.
Listen to this one. This is going to have a whole bunch of you rolling your eyes this morning. There was a student at a Florida high school who was in trouble for simply saying, "God bless America," during the school's morning announcements.
Some very unusual things began to happen almost immediately. Crops began to perish, droughts and famine. These areas were totally destroyed with drought and famine. Places that were once fertile were now arid deserts.
Historic drought continues to take a toll on California's farmland, and today millions learned they won't be receiving any water from the state.
A healthy and full lake in Northern California. There's only one problem. This picture is 3 years old.
And now I'm walking on top of that very same bridge. Take a look. It is a virtual desert. This is what drought looks like in the state of California.
On a farm in Rio de Janeiro state, healthy green corn stalks are disappearing. Brazil's worst drought in 80 years.
This is the first time it's been like this. We've had droughts in the region before, but nothing like this. This is the first drought we've had here, which has been really very difficult.
At this moment, what began to happen was the normal weather patterns completely changed. The patterns for winter became summer, summer became winter, and you might have a day of snow and a day of heat.
State water officials are painting a bleak outlook after measuring the snowpack in the Sierra Mountains. The worst part is one of San Diego's main water sources.
You may have noticed I'm wearing short sleeves in the dead of winter. That's because it is hotter and drier than ever before.
January should have been the wettest month, but the supply fell back to 1/4.
Very unusual things began to happen with law. I began to see local municipalities, and no longer were police departments the enforcers of the law of municipalities, but military police driving very unusual looking vehicles that I now know to be called Humvees.
Covering St. Lucie County, police in Fort Pierce now have a new tool to fight criminals. They unveiled a U.S. surplus battle wagon. It's a 6-wheel, 30-ton armored vehicle worth $700,000. But get this, the agency only paid $2,000 for it. Officer Keith Holmes says it's a great addition.
It was canvas here, and there was a man standing in the back. They were wearing very unusual outfits, by the way. On the top of them, I began to see cameras, little white, oval-looking, hot dog kind of looking cameras. And in the dream, it was revealed to me that these cameras knew the whereabouts of everybody's vehicles.
More high-tech crime-fighting tools for our police is the latest election promise from Labor. The move will make catching crooks through CCTV even easier. But could it also impact on our privacy?
Tech companies are among the groups coming to Washington to help create the first voluntary guidelines.
Facial recognition is already in some of our home appliances, like TVs.
Hi, TV.
In our mobile devices, pins and passwords are giving way to face prints. And the technology can single us out in real time as we go about our daily business, often without us ever knowing.
I was on my way to conduct another business transaction, and I ran into an individual. He was very, very excited and began to talk to me about something he had just experienced. This man said to me, Ken, I introduced myself to him. He was very excited. He said, have you got your identification mark? And I said, I don't know what you mean. What's an identification mark? He says, they've just enacted a new identification mark. And by the way, this started with a voluntary implementation first. You did it voluntarily first. This man told me you ought to get yours done real soon to avoid the hassle, because soon everyone, they say, will have to have this to conduct business.
And finally this morning, no need to worry about forgetting your work ID with this development. A new office facility in Sweden is offering workers the option to have a microchip implanted to give them access to the building. Now, the chip is about the size of a grain of rice and would be implanted in the hand.
Cecilia Osterholm starts her day with this new technology. She swapped her keys for a chip in her hand that uses a radio signal to open doors.
You have a chip in your hand there?
That's right. It's been inserted there.
Right, so that's how do you open it?
Forget wearable technology. Swedish office worker Lynn Kowalaska is having it implanted under her skin. A microchip about the size of a grain of rice is injected into her hand.
It felt pretty scary, but at the same time it felt very modern, very 2015.
I saw this man that was a very, very big man. I was sharing earlier in the tour that he was tall like a professional basketball player, but he was very big like a professional football player. He was an extremely large man, and he had a big hood, like a satin hood, over his head. My wife was in front of me, and they began to tell her she could renounce her faith and live. And now I realized what was happening, because this man was standing there with a huge sword.
ISIS released a new video today showing the execution of 21 Coptic Christians kidnapped in Libya. The video shows the Egyptian prisoners being marched onto a beach by militants dressed in black. Then the prisoners are beheaded brutally.
He was tall like a professional basketball player.
This video really marks ISIS on the world stage, well beyond the videos that we've seen in the past out of Syria and Iraq.
Stranded on a notorious stretch of coast in New Zealand. Almost 200 pilot whales have beached themselves. Around 25 of the animals have already died and more are expected.
After a few moments, I turned back, and there was the Lord Jesus Christ standing behind me. And I can tell you, folks, I know for a certainty He is the Lord of lords and the King of every king. When I saw Him, there is not one knee, there is not one tongue that will not confess His lordship, regardless of what side of the coin they are, when He reveals Himself to them. Every knee will bow. Trust me. Because this presence that He stood in was so powerful, so awesome, so anointed.
I never really heard the gospel in its purest, you know what I'm saying, in purity and in truth, you know what I'm saying. I ain't know that Jesus Christ was the only way.
But see, we only know by pictures. So you would say, yeah. I would say, how? You would say, I saw pictures of it. But you never saw it with your own eye. You can never see it close up. Never saw it with your own eye. So in part, we do trust the images of NASA and all these other amateur astronomers, who, by the way, are being plucked off one by one. But they want the amateur astronomers to put out the big news that there's a secondary system coming into our system, and it's starting to light up right now. The closer it arrives, the more bright it gets, and when you start to see a dim red glow in the sky, well, that's the beginning that's going to be the beginning of a fear component that people are going to cause themselves. It really will be. And that's not a joke. That's not wishful thinking. That's not doomsaying. That's just the fact. That is a fact. They've been watching this for a very long time. They attempted to publish this information a long time ago. I believe it was in the 80s, but it was suppressed. It was suppressed, and they did not want to upset the other religions by saying this. You know, in Jeremiah, it did state that the destroyer was sent forth. We read that. The destroyer was sent forth. Well, it just so happens, at the time of Jeremiah, puts it near, right now, is near the return of these other systems, by the way, which do explain the gravitational perturbations of Neptune and Uranus. And BP knows about this. So, it's coming from the south. Everything is coming from the south. It's coming from the south. Have you noticed they have restricted observations in the southern hemisphere? Has anybody ever noticed that? They're very restricted observations. Everything is thoroughly checked in the south, because what's coming is coming up from our south. Southern hemisphere is going to experience quite a bit. The southern half of the ring of fire and the other portions of tectonic plate shifts will happen in the south. So we should have volcanic eruptions in the south, and in the north we should have crustal displacement, which means shaking. There are 4 major trouble faults in America. 4 major ones. One is, of course, California. They have one. One is in between. I believe it's, is it Colorado, Oklahoma, and Kansas? Somewhere near there. Another one is Pennsylvania, New York, and West Virginia. How many know that? And then the tiny one is the Madrid Fault. How many know that? The Madrid Fault, in comparison with the other ones, is minute, minuscule. How many know that? Don't you find that odd? They don't care about people talking about the Madrid Fault, but they dare not talk about the one that spans from New York to Pennsylvania down to West Virginia. That one is terrible. It's horrible. The other one, that's Colorado, Oklahoma, and huge. It goes all the way down to New Mexico, makes a curve. It's actually splintering off. And it's worse than one in California. Much worse. But they don't talk about these things. Even if you look at a map of the continents, they've been proportionately drawn the continents. They don't have them scaled to their exact size. They do this stuff on purpose to keep people ignorant concerning the truth. You have all these people talking about the Madrid fault, right? The New Madrid fault, the Madrid fault. What about the other ones? They're far worse than that. They don't talk about these things. They tell you something that will draw your interest to a dead end. That's what you'll find when you search what they give you. It's a dead end. It's exactly what you'll find. In that respect, a lot of religious people are the same way. They like the traditions of men. Oh, you dare not break the traditions of religion. Don't do that. You have to have a ceremony for everything you do. And this, that, and the other. A lot of lies floating around. As the truth is exposed this year, as it'll become evident that massive things are changing. Stay balanced. Stay balanced. Make sure that as much information as you gather of space in the earth, you gather the words of your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Stay balanced. Because it's very easy these days to get pulled down a road, and it could be absolute fact, but you could be pulled away from the Lord's work, from His words. You could lose your soul in a very small thing. And things of that nature dressed very nicely. They were going on the right side. Now, mind you, this was back in the 70s, right? And I see cell phones. I used to draw pictures of cell phones and computers before they ever came out. And my siblings still have the pictures from this dream. This dream bothered me. And but the people on the right, they had the cell phones and everything. They were told to go by this door. They were told to go by this door. And the other people on the left were entering in through another door, a real pretty door, and then they would vanish. But all the other folks on the right who had the cell phones and PDAs and all this stuff and the business clothing, they were real busy. They were told to stand on the right. The person that escorted me there, that entity that escorted me there, told me to stand back. He opened the door, and in the door was the absence of anything that is called light. And do you know what happened to the people on the right? They were sucked in to that blackness. They were sucked in. Oh, this is it. This is it. This is the final transition of mankind. They're going into eternity. The question is, which road in eternity are they going to be in? You know, which road? Because if your soul is condemned, that means your heart and your soul turn to blackness. That blackness, Anthony, and you know, I had a dream one time, and I have to state this again. I was real little. I was tiny, but the dream impacted me so much, it never, ever left me. And this was, I was like, I was 6 or 7 or somewhere around there, 8, somewhere around there. Anyway, I went into this place, and it looked like it was 2 rows of people. On the left side were people who didn't have a lot, and their clothes were torn and everything. And they were going down this one way, but on the right side, people had briefcases and cell phones and shut. The door is shut. But the other people, consequently, they went to another realm. They went to another realm. And there was a table in this dream. And every so often I see a person pop up at the table, maybe 2, 3, 4. It was a huge table. And I asked that person there, I said, who are these? He said, well, these are praying on earth. And when they pray, they appear at this table. And I was thinking in my head, there's not that many people praying. And this is what I was thinking as a little kid. There's hardly anybody really praying. But the people that were praying, yeah, the people that were praying, I could feel their prayers. And when they did actually really pray, they appeared at this, I mean, it was a huge table. And that table was guarded. It was being observed all the time. And the rest of the places I could not go. I was only allowed to see that little part. But in that place, you could think to go anywhere in time you wanted to. All you had to do was think it and you were there. So the explanation was this. What is in a person? What resides in a person? What resides in a person will be that very thing that's attracted in their eternity. If a person is full of darkness, when the darkness opens up, it's going to draw them right into it. If a person is full of light, then when the light opens up, they're going to be drawn into it. You see, the people on the left side, even though he opened the door, weren't even affected by the darkness. But everybody that was in that line, they were absolutely sucked into the darkness. I mean, it was nothing. In this dream, or whatever it was, the blackness was so black. I've never seen black that black. You can shut your eyes and you still can't get that black. There was no love there. It was absolutely the absence of all light, all heat, all warmth, all love, anything good. It was everything negative. And it was so strong that they shut the door. When all those people were consumed, the door went to the earth to observe. Now, where I went, I saw this woman crying. The sun was extremely bright. The grass looked like it had not seen water in years. The trees were barely growing, but the sun was out. The seasons were all messed up. And this woman was crying, and you know what she was doing? She was blaming God and everybody else for everything that happened to her. This woman was, she was in drugs. She was doing drugs. She was doing things for drugs and everything else. I heard the television and saw Fox. Now, this is in the 70s, guys. And I'm sitting there looking at the television with the little red things going, right? And it was Fox. But she was sitting there, so they still had television, but everything else was beaten down. And everybody seemed that was left. There were no children at all. She was absolutely upset because her children were gone too. There were no children